We do have to cut the availability after about 20 minutes so Steve can catch a flight. So we'll try and get to as many questions as possible. We'll get started with Nick Kotsanika.
Recording in progress.
Hey, Steve, how are you? I didn't mean for this to be the first question, but looking back, when you were 37, you'd won the Cup 3 times, you'd won the Conn Smythe, and you have an osteotomy, right? Because you love the game and wanted to keep playing. And so I guess my question is, on some level, can you relate to Patrick Kane, his desire to come back? And does that sort of give you confidence that if anybody can come back and be effective, it's a guy like him?
Yeah, I think, well, again, I like going back on my own situation at the time. I did love playing. I wanted to keep playing. I would have kept playing forever. Honestly, I'm not sure it was the right decision, but I love to play, and that's all I've ever done my whole life. So Patrick Kane's a competitive person. He wants to play hockey, and so yeah, I totally understand without having a long discussion on why do you want to do this. I get it totally, for sure.
What do you think will have to happen for him to be effective? And what are your expectations?
Well, it's a little bit, I don't want to say totally unprecedented, because there are athletes out there. The most prominent one, not necessarily a hockey player, but is Andy Murray, who I think, to the best of my knowledge, had a very similar procedure. There's a lot of, again, I'm not an expert. But the little bit in doing our research here, there's little different ways of doing it, and the procedures have evolved and improved over the last couple of years, but there's different ways of doing the procedures, and some have, depending on what they're doing, there's different ways of doing it. Our optimism is, he had a very good procedure. From our doctor's opinion, gives him the best opportunity. Not only what they did, the way they went about it, gives him the best opportunity to come back and play. We had Patrick in Detroit yesterday and met not only with our doctors, but with our performance staff, and they're pretty extensive in their evaluations of players for their return to play, and they were really pleased with the results of the exam testing, evaluation, I guess, if you want to call it that. He's worked extremely hard. He's outside of the hip, he's in very good shape, and the tests in regards to his hip, we're very pleased with where he's at today. So one, he's got great hockey sense. His game has always he's relied mostly on his brain. Like, he's obviously got great skills, is a good skater and that, but what makes him exceptional is his brain, and that gives him an advantage that that part of it is, doesn't really deteriorate, at least till they're our age. So, it's much like Nick Lidstrom. He's so smart, he could play forever and just knew what to play. So I think his puck skills, his brains, he's in good shape, and it is unprecedented. So we're optimistic, and think, he has a good chance in medicine. We're seeing it in all sports, but in all these different procedures athletes are having, that are giving them a better chance to come back and play. And we think this is, a good, a worthwhile opportunity to try and take advantage of.
Thanks, Steve.
Yep.
Max.
Yeah, Steve, I'm just curious. We saw, I think a lot of us, a video that he and his representatives put out a few weeks back. How much had you seen of Patrick and on the ice in the lead up to this?
Yeah, I mean, it was through video that the things on and off ice that he was doing. We were able to talk with his not only with Patrick, Pat Brisson, his agent, and his therapist that he was been working, a therapist trainer that he's been working with throughout. So we had a pretty good idea where he was at and what he was doing. We had video of him skating. We knew to the extent he was skating. So and what he's been doing up to date, and then the next logical step is for him is to get into full practice and just to get up to the speed. And based from what we see, I think he'll be able to be up to playing speed the best you can in full practices, and that is difficult because, as you know, in the NHL with our schedule now, there's not a lot of legitimate full practices anymore. So he'll get as many of those as he can, as we can, until he feels he's ready to go.
And then how do you feel like he kind of impacts your team at a bigger picture level?
Well, the player that he has been, he's a playmaking, creative, offensive forward. He's very, power play guy, predominantly playing on the one of the flanks on the wing, mostly probably be on his offside, which would be the right wing. But a very creative offensive forward, and that's one thing like we think we could definitely benefit from. And wherever like you can have we have all these ideas we've talked about where he'll play in, what situations he'll play in, and with. I mean, that's a bit of a moving target, and you start with a plan and it will evolve. But I think for us, having another creative offensive playmaker is something that we could really use.
And then last thing for me, is this something that you expected? Is Patrick someone that you expected to be in on coming into this season, or did how you guys have started affect your decision to push for him?
Yeah, no, in the off season, we look at all the possible potential free agents, and then see which guys could be a fit for us. We can't exactly remember. I don't exactly remember when he had his surgery, but we obviously checked in with his agent at the time and with Pat. And at that time, he was having surgery, and they weren't, wasn't really in our plan. And then roughly would have been maybe a month ago or so, as he's getting closer. I can't remember if we had reached out or Pat had reached out to us, and that he's coming back. That's when we started to think about, boy, we could use a player like that, that type of hockey player. And if he's healthy, he can really help us a lot. And if he's even close to even if he's what he was last year, it's not too bad. We expect him to be better than what he was last year, closer to the player he was 2 years ago. Then he could really help us. And again, I say that there's definitely an unknown to this, but no, this summer we had thought about it. We talked about him. Boy, a healthy Pat Kane could help us, but really never given any consideration until the last few weeks, until we had some communication back and forth, or the last month with Pat Brisson initially.
Thank you.
Ansar?
Yeah, hi, Steve. I'm just guessing that with the team start this year that you believe that you can challenge for a playoff spot. And just what does this move do as far as just kind of further evidence, kind of proof that you do believe that this team could be in the race right until the end?
Well, a lot a lot can happen, good or bad, throughout the course of a season, as we all know. We can't predict injuries, things like that. But our hope is, I have some reason to believe that, based prior to signing Patrick Kane, that we're going to hang around if we're healthy, if we can stay healthy, and if our goaltending holds up. I hate to always put it on the goaltenders, but if we can hold up, I think we can compete for a playoff spot. I look at our conference and our division. I think we're, if again, it goes for every team. If you stay healthy, if your goaltending's good, you're going to be in the mix. And we think we have a chance to be in the mix. And with a healthy Patrick Kane, that gives us a better chance. So yeah, it's, we're at that point where we're not, and maybe that started somewhere last year, where we're not looking to what the draft odds are, more that, hey, we're trying to trying to see if we can't, stay in the hunt a little bit. And we were close to it last year at the deadline, but fell off. And, today we're hoping we can kind of hang in the hunt here and if anything, become a better hockey team.
And also just his history and chemistry with DeBrincat, how much of a factor was that in your decision?
Well, I think it has something, the two guys played together. I can't, it's safe to assume that I think they'll play together, if not at the start, at some point. They play very well together. And I think, again, his style of play, he's good with the puck. He can transport the puck. He can make plays over the blue line. And we've seen in the 20 games here, Alex DeBrincat, he knows how to get open. He knows how to get himself in the right spots to shoot the puck, and he gets his shot off very quickly. And he knows where to put his shot, that it always seems like it has a chance to go in, So you get the playmaker, the prototypical playmaker, and the shooter and the finisher, and that's what they are. So they work well together in Chicago, and we hope they'll work well together here. And but things can always change. You have a plan, and the plan kind of alters as the season goes along.
Thanks, Steve.
John?
Hey, Steve, I'm just curious, and you don't sign a guy to sell jerseys or anything, but I wonder what kind of a jolt do you think this gives the franchise, having a name like Patrick Kane and with everything he's done in his career come?
Yeah, no, we didn't. And selling jerseys or tickets was really wasn't even a consideration. We looked at it and say, if Patrick Kane can be healthy, that's the type of player we could really use in our lineup right now. And it'll make us a better team. It gives us more depth up front. It gives us another player that can be effective on the power play. And we can definitely use that, particularly where the spot that he's traditionally played on it. So the thought behind it was, look, we can let's bring him in. Again, we're all have a little bit of uncertainty just because not a lot of guys have come back from this. And at some point, like every other form of surgery, at some point, these guys, it becomes the norm, really, and we're hoping Patrick can be one of those guys, so much like Andy Murray has in tennis, to have an impact. So we think it gives us a better chance to be a better hockey team, to get more points. And in turn, I think initially with our, with all of us, the fan base, the media, all of us, we're kind of intrigued. Everybody wants to see how Patrick Kane's going to do. One, I think we all everybody admires him, whether you were a Blackhawks fan or not. You admired Patrick Kane, as a hockey player. And I think we're all curious to see how he does. And so our fan base, I think it's notable. Wow, the Red Wings signed Patrick Kane, and everybody will follow. But ultimately, he's gonna have to play well, and we're gonna have to win hockey games for our fan base to be pleased with it and keep following it.
And then, was there any discussion of longer term with him, or I guess how did the negotiation on all that work?
No, we talked their interest. Really, we only discussed a contract for the remainder of this year. Just, I think, I would let Patrick and Pat Brisson speak on their behalf, but ours was, hey, we're comfortable and seeing how it goes, this year, and we think it's a worthwhile, I don't want to call it a gamble, but a worthwhile chance to take here on a player that we think has a ton of upside and has worked really hard to try and come back from this and give it a shot. So, and we just discussed the remainder of this season.
And then, just to clarify, when did you go visit and sit down with Patrick? And I guess, what did you need to hear from him, if anything, face to face?
We actually we spoke while I was in Sweden. Derek and I, Patrick and Pat Brisson and Jim Nice from CAA, the five of us just met virtually online, and we had a long talk, close to an hour. Talked about obviously Patrick's health, what he's been doing in his rehab, where he is, how he feels, what he's been doing on the ice. We talked about our team, where he'd fit in on our team. Patrick's very astute. He's done his homework, not only on our team, but I think on all the potential teams that he might have interest in playing in. Knows our team, where we fit, knows where we are in the standings. So we just had a good discussion at that point, and that was our, our one kind of big meeting, and then, Pat and I followed up over the last couple of weeks about a potential contract, and once we agreed on the terms of the contract, it was, it's Patrick's got to come in and meet with our doctors and our staff to get a legitimate, so we have a full understanding of where he's at today and how close he is to playing, and that checked out really good yesterday. And so we sent the contract into the league, and he's joining the team today.
Thanks.
Sean?
Hey, Steve, as far as when it came to the contract stuff, it's interesting to see one of the big things that's out there is with a 35-year-old plus, you could do something performance bonuses, and this one is a straight salary one. Can you kind of shed a little bit of light on that? And was that something that was important for either side in negotiation or anything like that?
Sorry, what was important?
So just the fact where it's not a performance-based contract. There's no bonuses.
Just so you know, he wasn't eligible for the, one of those 1 year. He didn't miss enough time last year, and his birth date falls after the date that you're eligible for a performance bonus contract.
Okay, so he was never, so to clarify, he was never eligible for something like that.
My understanding, yes.
Okay. and
I hope I'm right.
Yeah. And you mentioned kind of Andy Murray and everything, and you mentioned having your doctors check him out, everything like that. Are there any, when you look at other sports and outside, what are the types of tools that you use when you try to research this stuff, just to get maybe a third opinion or whatever, so you have a best idea of what you guys could be dealing with?
Yeah, well, we talked to our orthopedic. We talk with our doctors, our orthopedic team. They're the ones that. Doug Plagans is our orthopedic surgeon. Talk to him about it. They're very familiar with it. They're, it's without getting permission. Until you get permission from the player to talk to his medical team, we just can't call up these doctors and say, "Hey, tell us what you did for this player and how was it." So, our medical team got us the management, the explanation of the procedures, and what can be done, the pros and the cons, the concerns, the reasons for optimism, what you'd potentially be dealing with. And then as we get closer and we get more information from Patrick and are able to speak with his doctor who did the surgery, get the reports, we understand the challenges, the concerns with the procedure, the potential limitations or whatnot, and then ultimately, we felt that this is worth the risk, so to speak, that he has a good chance of coming back, and he's definitely going to play. How effective he's going to be remains to be seen, but based on his health and his testing, I think he has a chance to be very effective. Ultimately, until he gets out there and does it, we don't really know. But again, you do your research in the medical field. We rely on our doctors to do that and kind of educate us on the procedures and the potential things that make it difficult to return, and why this particular procedure in this situation and how it was done, that there's reason for optimism.
And so with this signing, you guys, have 23, you have the 23 on the roster, and you also have Robbie, who's been in and out of the lineup. Like, when you're dealing with a guy who's coming off something like this, and you have the 3 goalies right now, does this put more of a trickle down effect into roster management at some point of making a decision on using a roster spot for a third goalie?
Yeah, if everybody's healthy, we can carry 13-7. We've been carrying 3 goalies and 7D all year. That's the one thing that's remained consistent. We've been going back and forth with with 12 and 13 when nobody's been on IR. Now it looks like if everybody's healthy, we'll definitely carry 13, 7, and 3. And for the time being, we'll go 13, 7, and 3. And if we need to make a decision on a goaltender, we will later on. But right now, our plan is to go 13, 7, and 3. And the only real drawback to that is if you want to make a quick roster change for whatever reason, you're a little bit limited. You have to, have the ability to assign someone if you wanted to do something on a moment's notice. And so now we'd have to, potentially wait 24 hours, but it's all very manageable at this point. And with the 3 goaltenders, we're generally pleased with our goaltending as a whole. And we'll stick with the 3 for the time being.
Hey, thanks a lot, Steve.
Sam?
You mentioned that it's sort of a moving target as far as the direct plan for introducing Patrick, but I'm curious to what extent you have like an approximate number in mind as far as like what is an appropriate workload for him coming out of the injury, and then also whether over the course of the season there would be any thought to like giving him games off even as he's not directly injured as another means of managing that workload.
Good questions. The first initially, as far as getting him back to playing, like ultimately, there's 2 parts to it, and we kind of talked to Patrick about it. Is one is, okay, our performance team, our staff, they have certain metrics they want a player to be at in returning to play, and he's very close and all that. I don't want to give you a specific date or game, but sooner than later, and he should be fine. And then ultimately, it's up to Patrick when he feels he's ready to go. Once our performance staff says, hey, we're more than comfortable. And I think if pressed, and he'd been skating and practicing, I think he could potentially play, tonight. But he hasn't practiced with the team, and he needs some time to get integrated in the team, know the systems. The coaches are going to want him playing within the structure that they have. So that's really up to him. Once our performance staff will give him the green light, he's ready. That's one part of it. And then it's when Patrick says, and only he really knows coming back, is how many practices do I need? Do I feel sharp? Am I mentally ready to go? And from my own experience, it was, you're going through these practices, you don't know. And then one day you say, you know what, I think I'm ready to go. And I would say that sooner than later. Is it 7 days? Is it 14 days? I'm not really sure. I don't think it's much beyond any of that, though. And then as far as throughout the course of the season, we're prepared. We'll manage it any way we have to. And again, in today in sports, you do a lot of, we don't necessarily rest players in hockey doesn't do it that much. I know other sports have done a little bit of load management, things like that, but we certainly measure players' workloads. We keep track of that for them, and we help them in deciding, on practice days, how hard do we go? Do we practice? And if there's any reason that either Patrick or our staff feels for any reason we might give practices off or games off, we'll deal with that. But there isn't a plan today for any days off or anything. We'll just see how he's doing, much like any other player. We'll see how they're doing, and if there's something that is cause for concern and cause for altering the plan, we'll adjust it.
Thank you.
We'll go to Art for our last question.
Hi, Steve.
Art, how are you?
I am doing well, thank you. When you mentioned Andy Murray, I watch a lot of tennis. It's pretty phenomenal what he's been able to do coming back from that surgery. And, let's be honest, you've had some very interesting procedures over your career. Did you take time to maybe look at this operation that Patrick had, this hip surfacing? I know you're not a doctor, but to get a better understanding of, what he's going through and what this rehabilitation process might be.
Well, I talked with Dr. Plagans, our orthopedic surgeon, about asking him a lot of questions. Tony Colucci too, just to get an understanding. And I learned a little bit, but I wouldn't sit here and talk to you about it. This particular procedure. I haven't a rough idea how it's done. I haven't had this type of procedure, so I don't know how he feels. I could talk to you about having an osteotomy and things like that, but as far as the hip stuff, I don't know a lot about it. I understand what he's had done and how they did it and why it's why this procedure gives everyone a lot of optimism and how they went about it. I understand that part about it. So, you learn a little bit along the way throughout your career as a player, and even now you get into management with all these different situations. But the medical team, we really obviously common sense is we defer to them, and they explain it to us in layman's terms as best they can, so we get it.
So, and I don't mean to be a smart aleck here, but we're not going to see the hyperbaric chamber or anything for Patrick Kane or anything like that. I mean, because you went through some extraordinary means. I think we all know that.
Yeah, it's all part of the science of sports that's evolved. Like I started in the NHL in 1983. Things have changed so much, and every year there's newer and better techniques and better products and equipment and ways of doing things. So, we're open to trying anything, and if the hyperbaric chamber is somebody tells us that's what's needed, we'll look into it again. But right now, that's not part of the protocol.
Hopefully, it's smaller than it was back. I mean, it took up the whole, at Joe Louis. But a question: when you look at this whole deal, rest of the year, money is very affordable. You still have cap space. In that moment when you're deciding that, yeah, let's do this, isn't it? Do you think, this is a no-brainer for us? I mean, this is a low risk, high reward type of situation, or do you allow yourself to think that way?
Well, we all clearly think it's worth the gamble. Like judge, I guess, for yourself how low risk, high reward. We do think it's very high reward. I don't, the risk. I want Patrick Kane to be healthy. Like, I don't want anything drastic to happen to him. That's number one. But we, again, in talking with the doctors, what can we expect and what are the potential hurdles for Patrick? We want him to be healthy. We care about this guy as a human being here. We just, if he can be anything close to Patrick Kane of, I'll say 2 years ago, forget, 2010 or whatnot, but again, with the brain, with the hockey sense, with the puck skills, it gives him a real good chance, and he's moving well. And with what we've seen and his testing, we think he has a chance to move well. And so, yeah, short term, we think it gives us, it is worth, it is a good gamble, if you want to call it that. And I think there's potential for high reward, and we'll see how it plays out.
All right, my final question, and this is about Axel Sundin-Pellikka, what he's doing as a teenager in the SHL. Should I put the brakes on, or should I be extremely encouraged? I know I've talked to some of the Red Wing officials who are based in Sweden, and they're trying to keep a lid on it, but he seems to be exceeding expectations. How would you assess him so far?
Yeah, I know he's playing pretty well. Scoring some good goals. Our guy, I read all the scouting reports and talk to our staff. I've seen a little bit on video of him play, and he's having a really good year. We're very encouraged by the season, how it started. They're probably midpoint of their season now, but how it's progressed for him, and he looks like a real good prospect. And so we're very encouraged by it.
Okay, thanks, Steve. Appreciate it.
No trouble, Art.
All right. That's all the time we have today with Steve. Thanks, everyone. We'll be back around 2:00 with Patrick Kane.
Thank you all. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thanks, Steve.